The Minister of Higher Education, Science and Innovation, Dr. Blade Nzimande, has launched the South African Transforming MENtalities Summit held at the Birchwood Hotel, Ekurthuleni, this afternoon. The summit is aimed at engaging men and boys to address the root causes of violence against women. It's based on the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization's Transforming MENtalities initiative. This was launched back in 2015 in Latin America and the Caribbean and later spread to a number of other countries. But to take this discussion further, we are going to be joined via Teams by the Minister himself. A very good afternoon to you. Thank you for your time with us here on the SABC, Minister.
Good afternoon. Thanks for inviting me to both your viewers and listeners.
We're obviously looking at South Africa, institutions of higher learning, perhaps 30 years into our democracy. And at this point, what's been the collateral damage of change, of transformation, given the scourge of GBVF that we see on both a micro and macro level?
Well, I would just like to say that, first of all, in many respects, some of the challenges we face are a reflection of two things. One, that our institutions are part of the challenges facing broader society. But secondly, also, we are a victim in a way of our own successes, because since 1994, we have rapidly increased access to our higher education institutions, perhaps even beyond our capacity to provide the necessary infrastructure and so on. But in relation to the issues that we were discussing today, we are actually focusing on taking our struggle for gender equality and women's emancipation, as well as the struggle against gender-based violence, to higher levels by launching this initiative called Transforming MENtalities, in order to be able to mobilize men and boys, where appropriate, to be able to join the struggle for gender equality and women's emancipation. Because from our experiences, locally as well as internationally, by the way, is that the struggle for gender equality and women's emancipation shall remain incomplete for as long as we do not mobilize men to actually be part of it. So the aim of our today's launch of this summit was actually to commit that in our sector, which has got about 2.5 million people, mainly students, 51% of which are women, we are actually going to be joining those other initiatives by men to actually join the struggle, especially against gender-based violence, but for gender equality generally. That is what we were actually doing today.
Yes, because on the back of that, given some of the other initiatives, policies and law that has been put in place, on paper, we really have it down to the T. Implementation begs to differ. And so I wonder how the summit or intervention is going to differ from that of the previous initiatives, given our current socioeconomic realities.
Well, it's the first time we are launching this campaign. It's not an issue that we have launched a campaign of this nature before. It's the first time that we are launching a campaign in our sector of mobilizing males specifically. And we have adopted a declaration, which is firstly that we are committing all men in our sector to challenge harmful gender norms and attitudes. Also, our declaration commits us as men to embrace responsible and active fatherhood and caregiving. Also, we're committing ourselves to consent. For instance, in terms of sexual relationships, they must be totally based on consent. And also, amongst other things, to promote inclusive education. And this is a very important matter that in our sector, we want to commit that we want to move towards educating everyone in the sector about the importance of gender equality, about the importance of fighting against gender-based violence. Now, we are going to be embarking on a number of initiatives that will lead towards this. For instance, we're going to be convening campus-based dialogues, interactions, conversations, both with men as well as with women, We are also going to be running programs, as I say, educational programs, in order to be able to empower men to be able to act in a manner that actually supports the objectives of gender equality and fighting against gender-based violence. And we are also going to be having volunteers who will actually be leading these campaigns, hopefully in all of our university and college campuses, men, to actually commit that as men we need now to stand up and say enough is enough about abuse of women, gender-based violence and gender discrimination.
No, absolutely, because we cannot continue to operate in silos, and that's where leadership comes to the fore. We have to address also issues of income parity, the roles and responsibilities of women, how that is perceived and enforced as well. I wonder if you'd like to comment on the role of language and narratives, given the scourge, the stereotypes perpetuating the discrimination that women also ultimately face.
Well, let me start with the issue of the economy, by the way, that we have just touched briefly, because it's one of the decisions that we have taken that in order to be able to realize these objectives, we must fight gender inequality wherever it occurs. In employment, for instance, it's high time that we need to push further the struggle for equal pay for equal work, and that we don't allow people to use their positions in the workplace to want to get sexual favors, including in our own sector. You know, this thing of sex for marks by some lecturers, it's something that we must actually be able to fight against. So there's a very important matter that we will actually have to deal with insofar as the economy is concerned. I do also want to say that it's very important that we focus on preventing gender-based violence rather than focus on dealing with the consequences. Yes, the higher health institution that helps us to deal with student and staff wellness has got, for instance, a call center where people can call a private line comfortably. But we also want to prevent this. And one of the main things that are important, which we had already started talking about even before this summit, is that these university and college communities are like any other community. We need to ensure that we mobilize everyone to be able to prevent incidents of gender discrimination and gender-based violence. Just like in communities, we are calling for community policing forums, we also are now pushing for safety and security forums in our campuses so that we are able to prevent these things and we are able to create much more safer environments and all that.
No, absolutely, because what transpires on the micro perhaps could be used as a reflection on the macro. And it's important to ensure equality, equity, and inclusivity is achieved. Minister, I'm going to have to leave the conversation there for now. Thank you for your time with us on the SABC. For those sentiments, Minister of Higher Education, Science and Innovation, Dr. Blade Nzimande, launching the South African Transforming MENtalities Summit that's going to be held at the Birchwood Hotel this afternoon. The summit really aims to engage men and boys to address the root causes of violence. So we'll have to see, where to from here, perhaps as those conversations once again come to the fore during Women's Month in South Africa.